My name is Harish Krishnaswamy, and I'm Managing Director at Sivers Wireless. I run the wireless business unit for Sivers Semiconductors. Sivers Semiconductors is a company that is headquartered out of Sweden that builds semiconductor solutions for a number of applications, both in the wireless space as well as in the photonics area. We're very happy to be joined here today by Dr. Tim Hancock and Dr. Misha Doler from Raytheon and Ericsson, respectively. Let me turn it over to Tim and then to Misha to introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Tim Hancock. I am a Principal Engineering Fellow and Director of Microelectronics Initiatives for our Advanced Technology business within Raytheon. I've been at Raytheon a couple of years. Before that, I did a stint in government, in U.S. government at DARPA as a program manager, where I managed programs in the area of phased arrays, electronic warfare, gallium nitride, and silicon CMOS integration.
Hey, Misha here. So pleased to be here. So I work for a small engineering shop called Ericsson, and we are headquartered in Sweden, as you know, but we do have a huge outlet in the US, and we're growing that part. So I sit on the West Coast in Silicon Valley, and we do have offices all over the US. And my role primarily is locally to make sure that our 5G and the future 6G gear works really with all the advanced technologies which come out of Silicon Valley, whether these are AR glasses or any Gen AI capabilities, to really make sure.
And so as a matter of introduction, the CHIPS and Science Act was signed into law about 2.5 years ago by the Biden-Harris administration. And it allocates about $53 billion worth of funding to enhance domestic semiconductor manufacturing and research. And that $53 billion breaks up as roughly $39 billion of manufacturing incentives for large semiconductor manufacturers such as Intel, Global Foundries, Samsung, TSMC, etc., to onshore manufacturing of semiconductor chips and packages to enhance U.S. capability in the area. And the remaining $13 billion is mainly directed towards research and development in the semiconductor space, as well as workforce development. So with that, I'd love to dive in and get Tim and Misha's perspectives on various aspects of the CHIPS Act. And maybe we could start out by, by asking Tim and Misha to speak to why, this is a timely moment for the U.S. to invest significantly in semiconductor chips, and how that's critical both for the defense industry as well as commercial applications such as wireless, which Ericsson would be engaged in. And maybe we could lead off with Tim too.
Sure. Yeah. So this is important to the defense industry because national security and economic security for the U.S. is largely intertwined. It's not very easy to separate those two, and so we certainly need microelectronics that are core to virtually everything we do. In the case of my company, Raytheon, we're fundamentally a sensors company where we build radars and similar sensors. And at the heart of all of those is an immense amount of microelectronics. And so the ability for the CHIPS Act to reshore or onshore some of these capabilities that maybe used to be manufactured in the U.S.
Thanks, Tim. And Misha, I'd love to hear how, Ericsson views the CHIPS Act and, how it's critical to, commercial wireless applications, which Ericsson is extensively.
Yeah, I mean, it typically touched actually on all the critical points, which interestingly are very similar to the commercial sector. And maybe not surprisingly, we're in the business of building, telco generations, and currently we're building 6G. Building 6G is really hard. Yeah, it's very hard. And it is hard because we need to 10x capabilities over 5G, and we need to make sure it works for billions of people around the planet without a single glitch, right? So, and the way we do that in a very simplified way is we improve capabilities, right? And we get more spectrum. So that's very hard. And the CHIPS Act comes along, and not only the CHIPS Act, the talent which it has attracted, right? So it is not only Raytheon, like our partners, commercial partners, but also startups, new companies, new intellectual ownership and firepower, like, Harish, you bring in through Sivers. That is something we really cherish. So bringing that all together is what we are really excited about. And so far, the engagement has been extremely fruitful, because think that we are a little bit like Raytheon. We like to build things in-house, right? For obvious reasons. So this is new territory for us. But so far, that new territory has been very fruitful. Arish, we've been engaging very openly on a lot of the engineering challenges, and the exchange of intellectual property has gone both ways. So there's a lot of interesting stuff we see on the horizon. So we're excited, very timely, excellent initiative.
Maybe both Tim and Misha, you could speak to all the different fronts in which Raytheon and Misha are engaging with with the CHIPS Act and with the ecosystem.
Sure. So Raytheon is incredibly engaged across the entire spectrum of chips, and that certainly started with the microelectronics commons, and that's probably for two reasons. One, the Department of Defense is obviously something we care about, and why we're able to pursue that strongly. But also the DoD was a little bit earlier in executing some of the funding as compared to the Department of Commerce. And so we started there. And in our case, we're involved in many of the hubs. NEMC is certainly one of them where we're very involved, but we have a footprint within all of the hubs to some degree. The way that we see interacting with the hubs in many cases is it may be as simple as an advisory role, helping them shape their business strategy around what transition really looks like. In some cases, we are part of the projects. And those projects range from everywhere where Raytheon is maybe just a transition advisor. So maybe we're providing requirements. Maybe we'll provide some testing. There's a few projects that we're involved where we'll provide a little bit of data.
Yeah, let me start where Timothy finished. So we are actually also increasing our headcount at the moment as a result of the CHIPS Act investment, which I think is great, because we're creating new jobs which are specifically geared towards the semiconductor industry, building radios, diversifying supply chain. I think that's something we really cherish at the moment. So we're beefing that up in our Austin side, but we're really deeply engaged with you. This is not only because we can't really spread too thin, but we realize that it's better to really address some very big headaches heads on. And as I'd explained earlier, building that FR3 centimetric range large electronic arrays is a huge headache. There's a lot of question marks around this, with a lot of risk attached. So therefore, working with you on that is very rewarding for us as a company.
This vision of lab to fab transition. So to me, what's really unique about the R&D initiatives within the CHIPS Act, which include the Microelectronics Commons Program and the NSDC, is that they're looking to support activities that fall under the category of transitioning technology from the laboratory to something that is mature enough for mass fabrication and deployment into applications. And that is quite unique. And so, we've seen that this lab to fab transition is extremely challenging, and it's becoming more and more challenging as technology becomes both more complex as well as more expensive, particularly in the semiconductor space. And, maybe, Tim and Misha, you could sort of speak a little bit to this lab to fab vision and how you see that playing out, and what success actually looks like at the end of, let's say, a 3 to 5 year Emmy Commons Award, for instance.
Yeah, so I think I have an interesting perspective on this, maybe because I was part of the Northeast Hubs advisory group and had the opportunity to help shape some of the projects. And we had a very large response. There was a large number of entities that wanted to pursue funding under the Emmy Commons. But the question that I would always ask prospective proposers is, what exactly is being transferred and who is the lab and who is the fab. If you can't answer those questions within the first, 30 to 60 seconds, then you probably haven't really thought about what lab to fab transition looks like.
We're all part of an engineering family here. We understand that the only way you can build is if you break things, right? You learn by breaking things, and you can only break things if it's actually on the table. There's something produced, there's a commercial proof of concept or product on the table. You can't break PowerPoints, right? So you can't do that. And therefore, for us, the magic of the CHIPS Act is that we have that pipeline. It's going beyond the academic pet projects, right? As you call that. I love that. It goes beyond these academic projects into through the valley of death, which we all know as entrepreneurs is a very, very hard valley to go through. And there we have then hopefully by the end of this project in a year, 2, 3 years time, a tangible prototype on the table, which is very different from an academic prototype. So this is not a Raspberry Pi thing. This is something which could, in theory, now go to design crew and actually be scaled up as a real feature, which we then as large companies can procure and build into our commercial products, right? So that's a huge difference.
And I think, speaking a little bit from the academic perspective, to complement what you were saying, Tim, I think what the CHIPS Act has already done thus far, but I think there's a lot more to be done here, is it's brought the excitement back into chip design. And I think that's something that over the last, couple of decades or something, we've sort of seen leave, sort of the imagination of. And so, maybe the final question that I wanted to sort of, bring to the forefront here is specific to, these awards that Sivers and Raytheon and Ericsson have been fortunate to receive under the Microelectronics Commons program. To sort of set the stage, we have 2 awards under ME Commons through the Northeast Microelectronics Coalition. One is in the area of 5G and 6G, where, as Misha mentioned, we're developing both chips and systems that will tackle the emerging centimeter wave bands, also called FR3. The second is to build simultaneous transmit and receive systems for electronic warfare. But sort of using these awards more as a template, I wonder if Tim and Misha, you could sort of speak to, how competitive this process was for the Microelectronics Commons program and for other CHIPS Act opportunities, such as the ones coming out of the NSDC more broadly. And what does it take for for institutions or groups that are looking to participate in either the next round of funding or the next program? What does it take for other organizations to pull this off? How should they think about participating within this ecosystem, and what does it take to sort of put together, let's say, a winning proposal for an award?
I think the strategy that I outlined before worked pretty well. Of identify what's being transitioned, identify what the lab is, what the fab is, and what is actually being transitioned, and to keep the project size executable. And what I really mean by that is it needs to be big enough to get something done, but it needs to be small enough that you can demonstrate good progress on an annual basis. Because understanding who within the government cares about your specific topic area is an important aspect of understanding their problems and then building an appropriately scoped solution around
and
that.
The only thing I could maybe just have as an addendum is the success we had with the projects from the very limited non-ergodic data set of submission we have, I have to put this as a caveat, right? Is that the projects where we were very tangible, both from an engineering point of view, as well as from a commercial point of view. And tangible means on the engineering side, you really are specific down to the bit and byte, to the joule and milliwatt, right? So very, very precise. And on the commercial side, you really lay out a credible pathway for commercialization of the feature or product or whatever you're developing.
Well, I think that brings us to the end of this webinar. So I want to thank both Tim and Misha once again for their time and their insights. I think this has been sort of a wonderful overview of of the CHIPS Act in general, but also some of the specific programs that have gone out the door and that our organizations have been a part of, and hopefully viewers find this informative, and also this sort of informs how other entities engage with the CHIPS Act and the ecosystem in the future. Thank you very much.